Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Collaborative Leaders Network and the Collaborative Leaders Huddle. I don't think it's against any laws anywhere around the world to say a Happy New Year to the Collaborative Leaders Network out there. 11 countries joining us today. I'm honored, thrilled, our entire team is, that people are giving of their time, their valuable time to join us in this important conversation. Excited to engage with you on an important topic. We're going to get to that in just a moment. First, of course, the Collaborative Leaders Huddle, sponsored by none other than Veritas Global, where we believe organizations that are not aligned not only fail their customers, they fail their employees, and that's painful, which is why we love rapidly aligning teams, collaborative teams, so that they can deliver more consistently, more successfully. Glad you've joined us. We've got an exciting guest that I'm going to introduce here in just a moment. But first, it's important to introduce none other than Sherilyn Jane, the talented, amazing, and inspired Sherilyn Jane. If you ever get a chance to work with her personally, you'll understand why I use those words. Sherilyn, please say hello.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Huddle today. I'm going to be fielding some questions. So if you want to ask Craig and Pear a question, feel free to put that in the chat. And if you want to remain anonymous, just send it directly to me and I'll read it for you.
This has really worked well for us. A lot of people come to the Huddle. This is the feedback that they give to us. They come to the Huddle because they want to get practical applications. They say, I agree, it's the fastest 50 minutes in humankind, but it's the engagement that we want with you. So just as Sherilyn said, as we're moving through this with our guest, if you don't feel like speaking up, just go ahead and chat those questions to Sherilyn, very useful. And it's time to introduce our guests. Founder, owner of Experience IT, Pear Lagerback. Pear and I have been friends for years. You can read all about him there. You can see his image. He's smiling already. You know, after I met Pear, I started saying the word perfect differently, and you will too. After these 50 minutes, things just become perfect. I say that with a smile because Pear is truly talented and his organization is talented, not just in delivering transformation for their clients, but the way they do it. The folks at Experience IT are just like Pear in the sense of having remarkable character, integrity, and a passion to serve and deliver in a way that is truly sets the bar of excellence for a lot of others. And so it's really exciting for me personally, as well as Veritas Global, to welcome Pear Lagerback to our Collaborative Leaders Huddle. Pear, say hello.
Hey, everyone. Craig and Sherilyn, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really looking forward to a collaborative session. On a footnote here, we haven't talked about this, Craig, but the perfect is actually something that's been troubling me for a long time because it's a high mark, but it's also against agile in general, because one of the biggest things about agile is the ability to fail fast and learn from it. And if you think of perfect, it doesn't involve failure in our typical nomenclature. So it always makes me a little bit uncomfortable.
Okay, duly noted, lesson learned, thank you. Excellent, and giving us the experience I anticipated. Let's jump to our big question right away and engage our network. Our big question for our time together: how do you build agile thinking across your organization, whether it's a small organization or a large organization? Pear, let's jump in. How do we answer this question?
Oh, it's tough, but at the same time, it's pretty basic. First of all, you got to have like the vision that you want to embrace agile. And the reality here is, if you take an outside-in perspective, you don't really have a choice. The traditional way of looking at our 3-year plan and 5-year plan, it's just the windows are too long, and who knows what's going to happen 18 months from now. It's just, it's too hard to predict. So what you got to do is have a mindset of delivering in smaller bite sizes. And how do you do this? Well, first of all, you got to have the leadership support that we should, at least at minimum, pilot this within the organization. Then you need the expertise where you can lead it with not only confidence, but like how to do it. So you need a pocket of expertise and potentially training. And then you need to embrace the idea that you need to change your processes, your structures, and your systems that allow you to deliver. So this is all kind of overwhelming. And probably the most important thing is, however you go about it, you need to have a culture that really embraces change and new ways of doing stuff. So it's really important to remember that the culture is, it's the last thing that I mentioned, but probably the most important thing.
All right. So I'm making notes here. I'm hearing, I'll call them levers, 4 levers. We've got, you mentioned leadership and their role. You talked about talent or expertise. Then we've got structure, process, systems. And then the 4th one, of course, culture. So let's drill down a little bit on what success looks like. Can you give us an example, particularly from the leadership or the culture?
Yeah.
Those 2 levers. What does it look like when we're successfully leading an agile organization in those 2 realms?
Yeah, so it's really hard because the textbook really says you need to start with the leadership support and drive it down through the organization. And, so really like a top-down approach. And we've been involved in, 50 plus agile initiatives. And whenever somebody embraces agile, it always starts from the bottom up because it's at the team level. It's the individual contributor. The people that are the closest to actually executing your strategic portfolio to drive that to the future. They're the ones that are making the change, but they need organizational support from their leaders to support it. So you need to have that champion that stands up and says, we're embracing agile, but we may pilot it small, and allowing that team to be cohesive and drive a new way. Because what you're doing is you're fighting your company's DNA of how we do things, and that's something that you need to let go of the past and see the brilliance of the future.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's really key. I mean, I'm sorry I'm interrupting because I think about so many organizations everywhere in all spaces that power is still vertical, right? Our answering, our reporting structure, it's still vertical. And yet, if you think about value streams, you think about value chain and how we drive value to the customer, like continuing with that metaphor, it's horizontal. And so if I'm a leader, then if I hear you correctly, I've got to rethink how I typically will lead an initiative. I want to create clearance, guidance, but I need to engage and empower at the root level, at the frontline level, you're saying.
Yeah, so what you have to do is empower the team to make the decisions. So instead of going from the silos where everything is hierarchical and we're waiting for the leader to tell us what should we do we have approval, you really need to provide the guardrails or the boundaries for where you can make decisions, but allow the team to feel free to drive to the best of their ability. Every organization will tell you that our talent is our biggest asset.
Right.
Well, why are you putting all these barriers on them? You're putting handcuffs on them and saying, I need to tell you what to do. That's a counterproductive thing. So a good agile leader, call it like from a C-suite perspective, need to empower and let go. And then one of the key things about being successful with agile is having a good product owner and product management discipline. So that is the leader within the team that really focuses on what needs to get done. And then within the team, it doesn't matter where you come from. So you think about an agile team of 8 people. When you show up every day, you're at the same level. No one has a higher opinion or a lower opinion or like matters less than anyone else. So it's about empowering the entire team and bringing out the best. And when you get that flow,
but I got to ask you a question there. I'm so sorry because I got to represent the network here. And Sherilyn, I'm going to come to you and see if we've got any questions from the network. But I know some of these folks, and I know the organizations that they work in, and these are organizations where leaders still feel like they got to call the shots. I mean, this is this is, you said it's about changing the DNA of our culture. There's futurists now that are telling us, right? I'm a big fan of Bob Johansen as an example, and the New Leadership Literacies, his book. He talks about this, that, and others do as well. Organizations of the future are these organisms, right? We're not functioning in the traditional silos, and it's moving and shaped. He uses the word shape shifting. So could you? I mean, we could literally say agile. If you're not agile, if you're not getting this that you're talking about, if we're not mastering this, we will not be able to bring differentiated value to the market. And in fact, our organization will be at risk, greater risk. We just won't be able to compete. Is that a true statement for you?
It's a true statement because of the competitive pressures that exist out there. And the competitive pressures are really coming from new business models that are generated from how data is accessible today compared to how it used to be accessible. So today, most data is accessible through these things called APIs. And by doing that, your speed to delivering a solution has gone from like literally years to days and sometimes hours. And it's simplified everything, and Amazon was a key driver to changing the whole landscape. And there's all these new different business models that are competing against the traditional way of doing things. And so if you don't adapt, you're going to be left behind.
Got it. Now, of course, I know what API stands for. It's aliens proving invincible. But just to make sure we've got clarity here for everybody in the network, API stands for? I put you on the spot. Sorry.
And so
our network will bail us out. Someone will text it for us. They'll Google it. We'll get it.
Yeah. So
conceptually, API is
it's a way to call a function that that allows you to say, hey, if I want to deal with my customers, that object is already built. So it allows you to like build from a foundation of a solid piece versus having to define and build it from scratch. So the best companies in the future will be integrators, where they integrate these capabilities that are already built versus having to build all the pieces.
Application programming interface. Your teammate just bailed you out. Thank you, Noel. You rock. Another good man from Experience IT.
I can't believe I did that.
He deserves a raise for sure.
Yeah.
For that. Carolyn, let's go to the network. Do we have any questions posted that we could bring to Pear?
Yeah, actually, I do have a couple that have come in anonymous, but Hildy, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question to Pear and Craig?
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Morning. Yes, my question would be, I really love the idea of, in a team, everybody's equal and just empower your team. Mm-hmm. And then you can come to moments where a team is maybe indecisive. So how you drive then the decisions without taking away the power of the team?
Oh, you actually, there's that's a really good question. So what us as leaders, we're always willing to lean in and help your teams with decisions. And it's actually counterproductive for a long term. So what you have to do is you can pose questions, but you still have to get the team to make those decisions, because if you don't equip them with that capability, they will continue to be indecisive. And now you're stuck in a situation where you have to be in there. And suddenly, as an organization, you can't take advantage of your human capital. And I mean that in a good way. But you need to let the team make the decision. So in a textbook answer, you would say you'd give them more time to make that decision.
I think as well a textbook answer, but this is where I see some organizations' teams struggle, is of course role clarity. Who's got in some organizations they'll call different models the D, right? They make the decision, but I still see organizations struggle because even though we establish role clarity, different scenarios, unpredictable scenarios occur, and so it's our job as leaders, I believe, to further facilitate what does it look like to execute within that role clarity.
Yeah.
In addition, I'm a big fan of leaders that will ask, how much data do we need? What's our decision criteria? How much data do you need? How much time do you need? And again, that's not an event. Hilda, I don't think we just do that once a year. I think as our leader, we should be doing that consistently, periodically, so that it's building the awareness of team members.
Yeah, and it's okay to ask questions. So at the end of the day, the product owner or product manager, they own what is the product, what is the output that the team need to produce. Like they own that. So that's kind of their role on the team. But they can escalate. They can let me go back and research that. It's okay to have that vulnerability to say, I don't have the answer right now, but I will bring it back to see clarity, whether it's customer driven, whether it's leadership driven or wherever. But you want to make sure that these teams are empowered, cohesive, and they leave their titles behind when they show up for the team. So that's what we refer to as the dual operating system, which is you have a cross-functional team that comes together to build these solutions for the organization. And when they show up as team members. And within the team, they make those decisions in terms of how should we operate. But a higher title doesn't mean more expertise.
Pear, thank you. And Hilda, thank you for the question. Sherilyn, we're going back to you. One final thought on how we do that. Again, big fan of those leaders that don't just make that a statement. We leave our titles at the door metaphorically, but actually, what does that look like when we do it? What do we do when we're sensing we're not doing that? So that we're, again, firing awareness required to execute with excellence. Sherilyn, other questions from our network?
Yeah, and again, I do have some that have come in anonymously, but I want to get to Carla's question because I feel like this is related to this topic. So Carla Roberts, would you like to come off of mute and ask your question?
Yes, I'm wondering what you do if the team makes a decision that you can't support.
Oh.
Hey, no tough questions, Carla, okay? Let's just stick with the easy ones, all right?
It happens.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so then one of the things you should do is self-reflect. And that's really because have you provided a team with the guardrails and decision-making criteria for what is allowable decisions? And if the roadmap says we want to go north and the team is taking you south, have you provided enough clarity around what the goal is? And making sure that the team understands the goal, it's imperative. So if you can't support a decision the team makes and they understand the goal, that's really perplexing. But in most situations, they may not understand the goal. So you need to do a better job of defining what that goal looks like and what is success really all about.
Underscoring that, Carla, I'm going to go ahead and build on Pear's comment. I think in the leadership of the future, again, Bob Johansson mentions this in his leadership literacies work, certainty will be punished. And those leaders that have certainty, this is what we should do and how we should do it, will be punished. That's the antithesis of agile, right? And so Pear is underscoring this need, I believe, to co-discover with our teams. Now we need clarity. As Pear said, clarity of direction, clarity of outcomes, how we're getting there and what we're co-discovering along the way as leaders with our team, I think becomes prudent and a requirement, moving from this certainty to just functioning in clarity.
Yeah, and the other thing that's important about agility is the ability and the mindset to adapt. So if you haven't defined everything, it's okay to add new boundaries or new targets or refined targets. So it's a continual evolution, and that's why you want to drive things in smaller batch sizes or increments, so that you have clarity and direction, what's right in front of you, and it feeds the greater good for a long term.
Yeah. Carla, thank you for that really important question, because it does happen.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, grateful for you speaking up. Let's go back to Sherilyn in the network. What else we got?
Yeah, so I have a question that's anonymous, and the question is, my boss gives a lot of lip service about agile, but they don't actually practice it. What advice do you have?
Pear?
Well, I can see why that question is anonymous. No one wants to tell their boss. I would invite them to the team, and meaning like see it happen, see the energy. So like I grew up in the waterfall stage gate approach, and you got to define it, and that will take 30 days, and then you got to build the requirements. That takes another 60 to 90 days, and then you got to design it, which takes another 90 days. So now you're half a year into something and you haven't even started. And it's very like lots of handovers and things need to be translated. And now you start building and you say this 1 year project that we had, it's actually going to be 3 years. So like if you really admire the past, you got to really look at, were you really that satisfied what we have been doing? And the thing about the most powerful thing about agile is actually seeing the energy of the agile team members leaning in every day, trying to make a difference and resolve things, immediately. And that energy as a leader of an organization is priceless. Does any of your companies struggle with employee engagement? It's a typical one where everyone complains about my employees aren't engaged. Well, it's because we have these counterproductive ways of doing things that creates wait time, inefficiencies, boundaries, and you can have a structure that allows for that, but when you go agile, you need to let go of those within this dual operating system so that you're committed to the team and the team success.
The spirit of that, Pear, then, so I'm going to go ahead and translate that in my mind. Perhaps 3 steps that this individual could do, a member of the network here. I think it's really important that we come in with a spirit of discovery with our boss in this particular case versus my boss is wrong and I'm right, because of course most human beings, whether I'm a boss or not, I'm going to smell that. So going in with the spirit of discovery, I think it would be valuable to explore, okay, what does successful agility, what is agile when it's successfully executed, what does it look like? I want to better understand your perspective. What do we do? How do we know if we're succeeding in agile? I want to get aligned with you as a boss, my boss, and understanding that. And then number 3, when we don't believe we're succeeding or fully operationalizing our agile approach, what steps do you want us to take? And I think getting that sort of alignment with a boss, a supervisor, among other questions, might allow us to move that discussion, awareness, and ultimately results forward.
Yeah.
Good luck to the network member that brought that question up.
We have a client right now that's actually facing this specific issue. So they want to go agile, but they have this resistance, and it's Craig's fault. If Craig just got it, we would resolve it. So like one of the things is that's not company wide is the understanding of like that misalignment. So like there's also, you may take advantage of just doing, formal or informal surveys to bubble those issues up to the top don't make it the delivery person of the message, but like make it come to you as an organization and say, here's a block of like something that stands in our way. So
appreciate that, Pear. I'm going to ask the network to forgive me here because I'm going to ask a question that's been on my mind. A lot of the clients we serve, an issue has come up. This topic comes up consistently, and then Sherilyn will come back to the network. I can't help but think as you look at the principles of agile, that there's a sense of that it also can enhance our resiliency. And as we well know, in the midst of this pandemic, the economic uncertainty, the pressures that all organizations are facing, that there's a lot of employees that are, I'll just use this word, we're hurting, right? I mean, the stress is immense. Is there a connection for you between building an agile workforce, having a culture that, building and scaling this type of agile thinking? Does it create greater resiliency? And if so, how?
I think from just in general, I would say your ability to adapt. So the mindset that I'm willing to change. It's been unlocked through this pandemic that we've gone through, and it's been really painful. But there's a lot of changes coming that are good, and some are like really changing landscapes. And this pandemic kind of forced that. So like you have a large groups of employees that are working from home right now, and they're finding themselves more productive. They're embracing new ways to interact, the Zooms of the world, where like we have a team with people from 11 countries, interacting like we were just in front of each other. It's huge. So that a lot of this it's a lot different today versus 2 years ago. And the way we embrace technology and new ways of interacting is huge, and the same is for the process.
Yeah, we're going to have at the end, for those that have been a part of our collaborative leadership huddles in the past, we like to sign off with our insight in an instant, the biggest and most important takeaway, if you will. I just had one right now, and this might be mine. This idea of, and I could actually use this with our team. I think I need to participate. I know I need to participate. What's the mindset I'm willing to change? What's the mindset I need to change? What's the mindset that I've been functioning from that is actually causing me difficulties, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, what have you? What's the mindset that we're willing to change? Thank you for that, Pear.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to the network. Sherilyn.
Yeah, Ben Erickson has a great question about applying the agile methodology. Ben Erickson, would you like to come off of mute and ask your question?
Sure. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really enjoying this conversation, but just want to see, how would you really apply the agile methodology kind of to the sales arm of an organization?
So from a deal proposal, right?
Either deals proposal or as the sales team in general. I know there's really been a paradigm shift in understanding. 20 years ago, the prospect really didn't understand anything about the business and you knew everything, versus now they know 85% of the market right now before you even start talking to them. So how do you really apply that agile methodology to a sales team?
Fabulous question.
Yeah. Let me ask you this first. So like what does your sales team look like? How many people do you have on your sales team, and like what's the cooperation within your sales team today?
And Ben, you can speak in round numbers if you'd like. You're good.
It's a small organization, so there's about 5 of us on the team. Okay. And collaboratively, I feel like we've definitely embraced it with kind of the changes like you mentioned, working from home, everyone's using Slack, that type of thing. But I just feel like there could be a lot more.
Yeah. So, and what kind of, are you guys using some tooling for tracking your leads and opportunities, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, pretty good tech stack, like using Salesforce as well as Outreach, I feel like is very impactful. But as far as like collaborating, I feel like that's an area that is lacking, and agile methodology could really help. Yeah.
So this is kind of a tough question because it's kind of the farthest. You're not building a product, you're like delivering a product. So first of all, I would look at your, if you look at from your prospect to selling, you have some form of value stream that you're part of to satisfy your customers. So I would look at who are the people, the critical people that are involved in that process, and then build a small agile team that works towards penetrating more for your business. And it seems like you have Salesforce. So like, then how would you do that? So you would come up with an agreement in terms of how you leverage Salesforce as your way to hold each other accountable and deliver the key things that you need to do to promote your sales. If you need to evolve your product, you definitely get the product team involved. So it's
Pear, you just said something there I want to underscore. I'm going to come back to you, but I want to underscore for Ben. I think it's really critical that I've learned in the last few years is, as opposed to just how do we get better at agile within the sales force, underscoring what Pear just emphasized is actually seeing it across the entire value stream. And so it's engaging with other functions within the organization and getting out of it just as a sales initiative or effort. Ben, I don't know if that resonates. I see you nodding.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I was getting from that as well. Is, I mean, even in my question, I mentioned it as a sales arm when really it should be part of the entire organization, like you're saying, right? Like as I'm working with product or I'm working with implementation, it needs to be one cohesive function instead of I do this, they do that, my team does this, that type of thing. So
yeah.
Thank you.
One of the things I spoke about earlier was, the energy of these agile teams. So what I would get into is, less long or meetings that happens once in a while, and get into like a daily stand-up rhythm to drive focus and energy towards what are we going to make happen today, and like make these cycles shorter. What stands in my way? Hey, product, can you help me? Finance, we need to change our pricing model, etc. But have like something that's rapid. It's, you're 5 people, so like 15 minutes a day. Get into a cycle like that, and where you say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And that creates a network of accountability that will help drive traction. And then not only that, but then when you actually close the deal, you all celebrate because you're all part of it. And it's like you can feel how you were participating.
Excellent.
Awesome.
And thanks for speaking up.
Yeah, thank you.
Sherilyn, let's go back to the network.
Yeah, Greg Robinson has a couple questions. Greg, do you want to take yourself off of mute and ask one of your questions?
Greg, are you with us?
Make sure that he's still with us.
All right. I think I saw Greg's question come in. So while we're waiting for that, and Greg, when you come on, if you want to reinforce your question, I'll ask Pear. It was something to the effect of, are there certain organizations, whether it's, okay, there he goes. You want to read his question, Sherilyn? Can you see it still?
Oh, yes, I can. Okay, I'll ask the latest question. Are there organizations or business circumstances that are more conducive to agile leadership concepts? And conversely, what are the situations where agile leadership behaviors would be detrimental?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks, Greg.
So what's more conducive? It's a call to action, something you have like the realization that you want to do things better, faster, cheaper, more effective, higher engagement. Like if you're looking for those things, then it's definitely conducive to it, because agile doesn't have to be hard. Agile doesn't have to require like years of training. There's ways you can do that, and you can leverage coaches, or like have one expert on your team that can help guide the process depending on the size of your team. So it doesn't have to be overwhelming, but you also have to be open to doing things in new ways. And then one of the key things is, if you have the ability to like break things into smaller chunks of deliverables that are meaningful. So in the manufacturing world, it's like they call it smaller batch sizes, which allows for increased speed and faster learning. So if you value a growth mindset and the need to adapt, and you don't know everything at this point, then agile is a way to go. When is it not a good option? If you're in a market that's not really changing, you have no call to action, just doing the change for the sake of change, maybe you're undertaking too much work. So if you don't need to, if you don't feel as a leadership team that you need to change, then I would think about it. I'm not saying that it's for everyone, but I would embrace it in most cases personally, because I've been on both sides. I mean, I've been on highly effective agile or waterfall teams, and when it works, there's nothing wrong with it. But the time to get there is often too long. And if you look at the customer satisfaction, is not always there. The danger with agile is you don't have clarity on terms of what you're trying to achieve. So you're doing stuff, but you're not getting the product delivered. So that's one thing to watch out for.
Great ad. There's unequivocally what we're seeing within organizations that do need to change and are attempting to increase the speed with which they change is the need for not just leaders, but all team members to be really clear on why. Why are we doing this? Why the change? What's the difference? What's the purpose behind it?
Yeah.
And of course, in the essence of agile, Pear, doesn't mean that why can evolve. We're going to make discoveries. And so in a lot of times it's going to be a compass point, but at the same time, our variance to that compass point, right, is going to create different insights, different looks. And so in summary for me, I hear your answer to Greg, the importance of us as teams to revisit why. Why are we doing this? What's important? What are the outcomes we're striving for?
Yeah, so Agile is really founded on lean manufacturing. And there's this book out there called The Goal. So it's a great book. And it discusses like this manufacturing plant that's about to shut down. And they have to be more efficient, but they don't know what efficient is. They think efficient is the same as faster. And they have these things that are going faster, but what they're doing is they're building up more inventory as a result of going faster. So they're actually costing the organization more versus looking at the flow of work and how you optimize that within your organization. So that's like one of the foundational elements to all of Agile is how do you make workflow through your organization where people are not sitting around in idle and then they're overworked, where capacity and demand goes up and down and it's impossible to manage. Really interesting and like thought-provoking. And if you can take that thinking to your organization, you can kind of start to see as here are some areas where we need to do a much better job to be more efficient as a company.
Thank you, Pear. Sherilyn, let's go back to our network.
Yeah, Greg actually had another question that I want to get to. The question is, how do you measure the success of agile leadership practices and integrate those into the performance management system?
Throughput. So I talked about the goal and getting throughput, which is really about, getting the product from the start out to the customer faster, better, cheaper. Then employee engagement. It's the amount of energy when agile is done right, it's going to drive that team engagement exponentially. So that's absolutely a key measure. And then you have customer satisfaction. So when you go through, and whoever your customer is, you may have internal customers and external customers. But when you see a happier customer and then say, wow, I can't believe you did it in such a fast time. I didn't know that was possible. Those are things that you should look at. And at the end of the day, no organization really exists without the customer. So the more you can put them at the center of everything that you do, it's going to help you, because you can argue with the customers that if they want to buy more products from you because you do it better than your competition, that's when you win. and it gets rid of a lot of the barriers and the politics. So I think that's really important. And then there are like key culture components too. Teamwork. So not only engagement, but teamwork. How do you measure teamwork from an internal perspective? That's something that I would look at. And at the end of the day, you will not succeed with agile unless you have a collaborative culture. And I think that's fundamentally why I have an 11-year relationship with Craig Ross. He opened my eyes in 2009 to like how to operate better together. Back then we had a lot of great individuals that could do amazing things, but they were heroic efforts. This is about bringing the whole team along and being better together.
I think that's significant. And if you look at how organizations even measure leadership effectiveness, almost all of the assessments that we see out there are individually based.
Mm-hmm.
This leader does this leader does that. They hold their teams accountable. They don't hold their accountable. They have they allow for creation of a shared vision, or they don't.
Yeah.
Versus what I think is really critical, and I think is the future, is measuring of the relational capabilities, the interpersonal capabilities. Collectively, do we energize around a shared reality? Collectively, do we focus on what matters? What's our ability to drive effective partnerships? Very few organizations are measuring that. Very few organizations are equipping their employees to actually do those capabilities. Those are human capabilities.
Yeah.
And so I just had to underscore that. Of course, I'm biased, but it's something I deeply see as a requirement in the future.
Yeah, and maybe the more like increased focus on and value of my team. So in the performance evaluations that are traditional, it has my boss and myself that I'm rating as part of the survey. But like I would give an increased focus to my team. Because ultimately, if you have a high performing team, I want to repeat that. Why don't I have 2 teams like that? Or why don't I have 3 teams like that? Or why don't, you start to find best practices and how do we come together? So excellent. When we started this conversation, we talked about how do you implement agile through your organization. And it starts with, you got to pilot something and you create the envy of like, I want to be part of that. Right? So now you got to be allowed to like spread the wealth and create a momentum and a movement within your organization to make it happen because of the successes we've seen, and build from that level in a safe manner.
So we're going to, it's the fastest 50 minutes in humankind. I think the reason being is because it's unscripted. We don't know where these conversations are going to go. It's one of the elements of the huddle that people give us feedback on, that they appreciate and get value from. I'm going to ask you, Pear, very, very quickly here as we're rounding out our time. If I'm a part of this huddle, part of this conversation, I'm in this organization, small or large, but I don't have a lot of authority. But I know we have to change. I know that this is the future of leadership, the future of business as it relates to how we operate. Very, very briefly here, just in a few sentences. What counsel do you have for me? What can I do?
I would lean in, learn. So like I would look at, if you're a mid to large size corporation, I would look at the scaled agile framework. And the reason why I reference that is they managed to put agile on one page that deals with anything from what happens at the team level up to the C-suite and at the portfolio level, from strategy through execution. And at least that will give you a picture of what that looks like. And there's a lot of resources around that. One of the problems with agile is there's not a lot of standards across. There's a lot of variations of agile. So like, what do you follow and what do you lead with? So nothing is perfect, but you got to have something that you can make sense out of. And I believe that the scaled agile framework resources are solid. There's like definitely key themes in there that you can take away, you can learn from, and then you can look at how do we drive it down to our organization.
And we'll share some of those resources here in just a moment. I appreciate your answer there. I want to emphasize learning allows me then as an employee to bring even more value to the organization at some point as we move forward. All right, we're going to come back and wrap things up with our insight in an instant. I'll ask our huddle to participate as well. Several of you, I recognize the faces here, have experienced the Veris Global Program Pathways to Leadership. Just a reminder that with the pandemic, fully virtual now, a different experience with same promised outcomes. Pear Lagerbeck referenced this program, of course, as fundamental in driving the collaboration required to make agile work. Excited about what we've done with that. Encourage you to reach out to Christy Derby at the bottom there if you'd like to have more information. Resources, we've got plenty for you. Several of you are familiar with our book, Do Big Things. By the way, Connected Focus videocast, that comes out, I think, Thursday, 2 days from now, on the topic, it's just a couple of minutes long, on the topic of what's your team's relationship with fear of failure, fear of aiming too high. Excited about that video cast. You can subscribe, of course, where you subscribe to most of your videos. And of course, we're on LinkedIn and our leadership blog. I want to highlight the resources that Pear was talking about in the lower right there, Experience IT and some of the programs that they offer. And Sherilyn is posting some additional content for you there. Our next huddle, put on your radar, your calendar, a unique opportunity for us. We're going to engage with a person who's become a friend of mine. She's simply inspiring. Sujin Lin, Senior Vice President, Chief Information Officer at Elcon. Truly a brilliant leader, an inspired leader who activates the hearts of those she leads. We're going to be talking about what it's like to lead transformation, through transformation. We'll have the specific question for you. I hope you'll put that date on your calendar. We'll look forward to that conversation with Sujin Lin. Let's go to our insights in an instant. The most significant takeaway. Maybe it was an idea that was reinforced for you. Maybe it was a new thought. You can put yours in the chat space. Sherilyn, can I ask you to participate here? What was an idea, a thought? What's your insight in an instant?
Yeah, my insight actually came from the network. Danelle posted this in the chat, and I think that this is really important. She said that agile is beyond adapting. It's actually the mindset that allows you to forgive both others and yourself, which builds resiliency. And I think that's so important because we can get, I know for myself, I can get tied to projects and then having to be agile and maybe switch directions. I can take that personally, honestly. So I think that that's super important that it's about forgiving.
Yeah.
So thanks, Danelle.
I love you calling that out. Agile is about going to another level as human beings. That's what's so exciting for me. My insight in an instant, this idea of, hey, what's the mindset I need to change? What's the mindset I need to evolve? Getting really clear on that and accountable to doing so. Pear, let's wrap it up with you. Your insight in an instant.
I think at the end of the day, it's really all about the culture and, building that culture that allows for growth, continuous growth, but also like allowance of failure. And, that's one of the critical things of like agile is allowing yourself to fail, but you fail quicker. So the cost is lower. And it goes back to Sherilyn's point, forgiving. It's okay when you fail small. When you fail big and you have to wait for it, it's more impactful in a negative way, and you want to avoid those things.
Pear Lagerbeck, Experience IT, thank you so much for joining us and bringing the value you did. Thank you to everyone in the Collaborative Leaders Huddle. Please remember, your leadership matters, but only teams deliver. We'll see you in the next Collaborative Leadership Huddle, everyone. Take good care. Thank you.
Thank you.